Aaron Spencer, husband, father, war veteran. The hero dad charged and branded a murderer by the state of Arkansas after shooting Michael Fossler, the 69-year-old man who had essayed his daughter after a car chase because Fossler took her from their home in the middle of the night while out on bond. We have tonight or today Aaron's defense team with us, and we will get into exactly what happened that night, how the state planned to present a case of victim blaming Aaron's 13-year-old child, and why the court eventually took the most dramatic action available, and they dismissed the case. Let's dig in. Hello and welcome to Defense Diaries. I am your host, Bob Mata, and as always, I am joined by my beautiful and brilliant co-host, Allie. What's up, girl?
Hey, babe. Hey, all. It is Thursday, July 23rd, and we have with us here the partners, Erin Cassinelli and Michael Kaiser, who were the defense team for Aaron Spencer. So let's not waste time. Right, babe? Bring them on.
Bring them right on. Let's go.
All right.
Hey, guys.
Hey.
Welcome to the party. Welcome to the party. I've been dying to talk to you guys ever since the amazing result that you guys so brilliantly made happen. And we want to hear all the deets. We want to hear all of it.
But before we get into all the details, why don't you just tell us like who you are, a little background on yourselves?
Well, I'm Erin Cassinelli. I've been a lawyer for, a long time, a couple decades. I have a law firm that I had with a partner who retired, and Mike is the other partner here. And together we've built quite a law firm, and we represented Aaron Spencer, and we're super proud of it. And we're super proud of Aaron. So I'm glad to be here to talk about it.
Indeed. Indeed.
And Michael, tell us about yourself.
I'm Michael Kaiser. I'm a partner here at the Erin Cassinelli firm in Little Rock, Arkansas. Practice primarily in the areas of criminal defense, appellate law, also known as the Jewish Bulldog.
Love it.
MOT. All right.
No, it's like it's trademarked and it's a whole thing. And I mean, he had that following when I met you, really. He's sitting in my office, but on a different computer. So
I was wondering, I'm like, who's Aaron looking at?
Yeah, he's right there next to me. But he's well known as the Jewish Bulldog.
I love it. I'm married to a Jewish Bulldog as well. So that girl up there is a Jewish Bulldog as well. So good. I love to have it.
Should we have him take us through that night, babe, or where do you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, why don't we leave it to you guys? We want to give folks that may not be super familiar with the case. I think that a majority of our audience is, but if we have folks that watch it on Replay Crew or just are new to the case, why don't you just kind of give us the background as you guys saw it in terms of what happened that night?
I know it was October 8th, 2024, and there hasn't been the facts that we got were mostly initially facts from the state until you started putting out some more details, but there's so much we don't know. So yeah, why don't you give it to us?
I'm gonna let the Bulldog take this first one.
Well, and I apologize, I have to go shortly, but I'm not going to answer the question you asked. I'm going to actually say what it's not, because the narrative that is out there, it just doesn't match the actual reality of the facts in this case. The narrative that I've heard is essentially kind of like the John Grisham book, A Time to Kill, where a father of an abused child goes to the courthouse and actually shoots the two men who are about to face trial for her, for the crimes against her, and shoots them while they're being escorted by police in handcuffs. That's essentially what the narrative about this case was, that a father got mad that someone had abused his child and he went looking for him and he murdered him. That could not be further from the truth. That would be murder. That is not justifiable homicide. This case is a 100% justifiable homicide, regardless of who Fossler was. If he had been a stranger and was doing what he did that night, he had to be killed. justifiably so. The fact that he was a pending, soon-to-be convicted pedophile lifer only makes the justification that much stronger. So I just want to be really clear up front. The word vigilante has nothing to do with this case. The only vigilante involved in this case is the person who the Child Advocacy Center in Lonoke County is named after, Wade Knox. So I just want to be very clear that Erin is not a vigilante. He exercised lawful, legal, justified self-defense in defense of others. And that narrative that kind of seemed to permeate the case that it is just wrong. The facts are actually way better than what was initially being reported and what I'm still seeing out there.
No,
Like
and
the-
we would.
Like he was angry and therefore it's vigilante. Like I don't know how many like self-defense or justifiable homicide cases you guys ever handled, but I've never had one where the defendant was like, man, I loved that dude. I was so upset that I had to shoot him. He was such a nice guy, right? Like, usually they're pretty pissed off in that heated moment where someone's trying to kill them or a third party. And, you know, it's like, I don't know where they decided that if you don't like the person or you're angry or you hate them with every fiber of your being, that you're not allowed to shoot them if they try to hurt you.
Right.
And you know, Bob and I have been screaming that. Like, I don't know how many times Bob was like, "This is not a vigilante case," and going through that. And I always gave like the example of, because like what you're saying, well, they're trying to say, well, he wanted him dead. He would have wanted him dead. He was angry at him. I'm like, okay, let's just take an extreme scenario. And you've got like your typical like horror movie something where, you know, some guy, let's make him Jason or Jason type, comes in and slaughters your half of your family and escapes into the darkness. And you're sitting there thinking, if I ever see this man again, I'm going to kill him. And I want nothing more than to kill him. I wish every day he was dead and I could kill him. And then the monster comes back to your house and he's slaughtering other family members and he's dragging someone out. Whatever the case is, he's dragging someone out of the house. And you take that gun and you empty the rounds in it and then throw it at him after, and then kick him after he's dead. Like, you know, whatever it is. How can you say that is any less justifiable homicide? If that man needed to be killed at that time, all of the hate, the anger, whatever, none of it matters. So we're here for everything that you just said, and you know, that's why we wanted to still do this, so people could, anyone out there who doesn't hear and still thinks this was a vigilante case and he got off on Bob's least favorite word, a technicality, could understand why that's the furthest.
You know, due process, the technicality, the Constitution.
Yeah, right.
Don't worry about that. You know,
That's where I'm at.
Michael Fossler knew this because he got a dash cam specifically because he was afraid that someone was going to catch him in his truck with the child. So he knew that he would be endangered if he took that step of endangering her.
And then, Allie, I appreciate that metaphor. I think that's excellent. But you mentioned kicking him after he's dead. Again, that is not something that happened here.
I know that didn't happen.
Well,
Michael Fossler was alive 20 minutes later when EMTs arrived to treat him. He had used some sexual enhancement drugs that day, which can help with vascularity and might keep you alive a little longer after you've been shot because you're sexually abusing a child.
Wow.
And, you know, this is a guy who was a military police officer as well as a constable. So this is not your average 69-year-old tepid old man who doesn't present a threat. Also, he was still moving when the EMTs got there. So the threat was not extinguished at that point. So I know that a lot of people seem to take umbrage with the fact that there was a pistol strike to the head. But again, until the threat is dead, it still exists. And Erin can tell you that from personal experience fighting on the streets of Iraq, where he saw people take shots that appeared to be fatal shots. but weren't. And those insurgents were able to take out other American servicemen on the way out because someone didn't,
Finish the job.
Finish the job.
Well,
Right.
and so most of what the prosecutors have said about what happened at the scene, as far as, and we can talk, but there's a lot more detail to that than has been put out there.
Oh, he wanted to go. I was going to ask him. Wait, you're muted now, Erin.
Aaron's muted.
Erin, your sound, we don't hear you.
Like when Michael closed his thing
When Michael
down.
closed his, even though your mic is not muted, but when Michael shut down, we heard a fuzz and then it went back. Wait, talk again.
Now,
There you
Now I
are.
hear you.
all the mics to my computer, and it's 5 of them.
Okay, so now that's working. Try.
Well, it sounds bad though.
I can't hear you either now.
All right, here, go back out, go out and come back
Hello?
in. Maybe it just needs a reset because y'all were.
Can you hear us? We're going to boot you. Come back. I'll text her.
Okay.
You boot her. Okay.
Okay. All right. I'm going to kick from studio, kick the guest. Yeah. Thanks, DB.
Jesus. And all right. So, and yes, I was making an extreme parallel there. He did not kick him and he was still going. But when Erin comes back, we're going to take a step back. We're going to ask her how she got involved in the case. And then we're going to go through, or maybe we can go through the factual scenario a little bit more. So that.
Yeah. See, tech wizardry. It's not exclusive to us.
No.
Like that. Yeah, her sound was, I don't know if they were sharing a mic because they were like in the same room. I'm not sure.
Right.
I'm not
So
sure.
while we're waiting for her to come back, let's see what people are saying, see if they have any questions. We've got a ton of new members. A lot of these are from the old one, but still, I'm going to list them all off and then you can welcome them. Jen, DC Peppers, Casey.
Can you hear us?
I can now. Can you hear me?
We can. Yes.
All right. I'll save that. We were going to burn some time by saying hello to.
I think
new
somehow
members.
you were connected to Michael's, like when he shut
Where's my
down.
laptop? That's what's so weird, and his muted. So I don't know what. Anyway, I just had to go in and go out, and it reset it. So I guess here we are.
All right,
Yeah.
perfect.
So I think what we should start with before we get into, because I know we also want to know how you got the case and stuff like that, but let's just go back to the now I forgot the October 8th, 2024. So it's and this is just after midnight, right? He wakes up, his 13-year-old daughter is gone, not in her room. The dog barking. Now, was the dog barking something important to the defense from your perspective?
To a degree. I mean, I think that was not a typical situation. I mean, the dog didn't typically bark. So that's, as a parent, you're immediately, where's my kid? And, it when you're asleep and you hear something like that, you're jarred awake, so it's what's going on right now?
Yeah.
Right.
But, there could have been other times the dog barked and they didn't hear it for whatever reason, because we learned later that he had come and gotten her before. And we don't know exactly when that was, or was the dog in the room that night, or was
Right.
she stealing from she maybe wasn't in her room when she left. So, yeah, like that was an unusual and alarming moment for them.
So, and then, the way we think of it, it's like he sees she's not in her room, gone, and he knows exactly who to fear because Aaron Spencer, well, I guess, what was he, 67 years old? I think I made him older, but he's been out on bond despite all the charges. Can you tell us all the charges that he was facing? If that's how typical this type of bond is in a case like that?
Well, so
Start us
those are questions with long answers, I guess I should say. So he had, and I can't remember the exact amount, it was 40 some odd charges. He had a couple, maybe 2 or 3. The most serious were internet stalking of a child, which is communicating, through a phone, through the internet with a child for the purpose of meeting them for a sexual crime. And then if you actually meet them, that becomes a Y felony. So it's a lesser felony if you're trying to set it up, and a worse felony if you actually do it. So
do they not have a grooming charge in Arkansas? Because that's grooming.
So here's the problem that we have sort of learned from this case is many of our state statutes that criminalize this kind of behavior have really low age limits. So the grooming statute only applies to kids aged 13 and under. So he started grooming her when she was 13, and then she turned 14 shortly thereafter. So all of the charges that he faced were based on her age being 14. Not that all of the conduct was when she was 14, but I think it was probably difficult at that time for them to figure out exactly when things happened versus when her birthday was, because it was right in the middle of all of that. And so they went with the charges that applied to a 14-year-old. So the internet stalking become the most severe because they don't have that age limit. They apply to minors in general. And same with child pornography. It's more broad. So there were child pornography charges. And then there were some lower class sex assault charges because her age of 14. And it shouldn't be that way, right? Like you shouldn't be able to start like sort of grooming a child, and then the day they turn 14, like, my God, they can just make all these decisions for themselves. And the criminal statute's the same way, and I've never had a reason to think of it this way, but there are 3 sort of bases for kidnapping, and it's like lack of consent, and I think coercion and force. And apparently once you turn 14, you can decide to go with whoever, like your stranger neighbor that's 90 years old, because now you're 14.
That's crazy.
That was one of the first things that I was highlighting with Arkansas. I was like, what in the hell is going on with Arkansas? Because if you're over 14, if you're 14, they don't need your parents' permission, and it's only assault if it's by force.
Or it's only kidnapping. So it's still a crime, like the act of, it's still a lower level sex assault.
Right.
But that is wrong. And it's, I think, like sexual indecency with a child. But these are low class felonies, some misdemeanors. Like that should be rape. At least
absolutely
sexual assault first or second. Now, this is the even crazier part. How do I say this? Like if he was in a position of trust or authority, so if her parents had known that she was with him, then he would have been subject to a sex assault 2 or 3.
A higher felony.
If it's a complete stranger that befriends and grooms your child and you don't know about it, then it becomes not a higher class of crime.
Makes no sense.
Makes no sense.
And this is why we're really hoping that people from Arkansas are out there paying attention, because you've got to go to your representatives and say, yes, we want stricter protections for children against sexual assault, against, all these things, so that the kidnapping and the sexual assault statute can change. Because, to say it's not the most severe penalty or crime unless you use force when they're 14, what about the like you said, the child that you start with when you're 13 or when they're 5 and they're just being, abused throughout their entire lives? And
so like to that point, kids who are groomed for these purposes often don't have a background, like they don't have sexual boundaries, they don't have personal boundaries, they don't know what's normal and not normal. So a groomer teaches them those things. They slowly broaden what that child understands to be normal, right? Because they don't have a normal. They have no sexual history. Right. So many times they are subject to force. They just don't know that that's not normal sexual behavior for adults, right? That's so like they're not going to report it as a forceful act because as far as they know, these are normal actions when in reality they are not at all.
So he's got all these charges. You said what, almost 47.
Mhm.
And tell them about the bond and about the no contact.
Oh yeah. So you asked, is $50,000 a normal bond? So one big problem is that there isn't a normal bond. You can go to one county and apparently Lonoke and get a $50,000 bond, and you can go to another county, let's say an hour away, and you might get a $300,000 bond or more. It does not appear to me that Lonoke was really making any real assessment of what bond was appropriate, and more importantly, what conditions.
That's what I was going to say.
Like,
To me,
there are
that's
no
where it
conditions.
all rests. I could care less about the money because,
Yeah, me too.
right. But why isn't there an electronic monitoring and the no contact stuff more? Was it just no contact with children, or was
So
it something?
It literally said, I think it said no, it may have even said no unsupervised contact with minors, and like that's it. So there's no, this minor, and I think it does say something about family members, but you can't enforce that because there's nobody's name there, right? It's like, whose family member?
Yes, I do remember that. We pulled up the bond thing, and I'm like, it says all minors and then their family members and whatever. I'm like what the hell are they talking about?
It doesn't make sense. There's no notice, right? Like to the defendant of who they can and can't have contact with. And then there's no distance. Like it doesn't say you've got to stay away from this, address or whatever. And there's just no accountability. There's no accountability by the defendant. There's no accountability by the police, by the prosecutor, by the judge. It's like, oh, see you later. Hopefully he comes back. They didn't run a search warrant and find his electronics. They searched his phone that he had the day he was arrested, but they didn't go and find his other electronics. And it turns out, we know from after the shooting that he had a ton of electronics and was very, I would say for a 67-year-old, quite sophisticated with his electronics.
That goes with the predator
my
lifestyle.
parents didn't, as of a week ago, didn't have an online utility account ever, and this guy's got like numerous computers and SD cards and all kinds of weird camera, So the fact that they didn't do that also tells us that nobody's paying attention. We're just pushing people through here. When I asked, because I asked for months, like where are the returns from the search warrant at his house? Because I was wanting the prosecutor to realize that they didn't do it and how ridiculous that was, which never happened. And he just went, well, no, they arrested him, And then after the shooting, I'm like, did y'all look at the devices? Why would we look at him? He's dead.
Wow.
Well, what about other victims? What about other offenders? What about people he's sending photos of children to? And I can tell you from his devices that we have, it's like almost every communication that he had with anyone had some sexual component to it, other than maybe his children and one other person.
Erin, Are you telling me to date that there were victims that could have been identified on his electronics whose parents do not know that their child went through this, either the grooming aspect, whatever aspects of it, so that they can get the help that they need, so they can intervene, so that other victims can be identified? To your knowledge, that has not happened?
I would say correct. So in the summer of 2025, after I yelled and screamed, and I can't remember, I think I had to negotiate for okay, I'll do this if you do this. They said they did look at, because see, by then they hadn't looked at any of the devices that they'd found at his house after the shooting, and they also hadn't inventoried either of the trucks, and therefore hadn't looked at any of the electronics that he had in his truck, which was quite a few. Now, that is after the shooting, right? So with everything that's happened, what do you think those look like? And I have to say, I have to rely on, I think the sheriff's office did those reviews because we were looking at a close court date. And I don't trust anything they did, but most of them were blank. Because guess what? He's a pedophile, not an idiot.
Right.
So he's just been arrested. So of course. Now, why would it make sense to have so many electronic devices and electronic storage items, and they just don't have anything on them? So I say all that to say the answer is yes to your question, because you have to do that when you find out he's a pedophile, not 6 months later when he knows that you're like, he could be subject to those searches.
Right.
You
And
know?
we all know
Exactly.
that they could have subpoenaed to get the records directly, even if he tried to erase them. They could recover things from computers. I mean, to say that there's not much to look into because he's deceased, it just goes to, well, it just goes to the whole way that they've treated this case from the jump. So before we get there, so take us back to what happens that day. So he finds his daughter missing, and what
Yeah,
happened?
so he and Heather wake up, dog barking. They go in a room, and she's got like a sweatshirt or something stuffed under the comforter or whatever on the bed. And you know, she had a hard time. I mean, like, everything that had happened, that's tough for a kid, right? So you know, they're worried. Did she, you know, walk off? Where is she? And then, you know, as a mom would do, you start contacting friends or people that she might have talked to, you know, and they had fairly recently moved back. So that's not a whole lot of people. She was close to a family member that's around her age. And so Heather reached out to that person's mom, and who's her sister-in-law, and they talked, and that shook loose slowly, you know, a little bit from the kid. Well, I think he was communicating with her, and I think he sent her, I can't remember right now, I think it was either money or some food, but he did it through the family member's account, not the child's. And so she's like letting this go, and sister-in-law is telling Heather Spencer, who's telling Erin, he's still there, he's making calls. And so it's like, call the sister-in-law. Sister-in-law hangs up. Then sister-in-law calls back, but Heather's on the phone with someone else because now she's calling her son and, you know, everybody that you
Right.
call. So then Erin's talking to her, and they're getting information that immediately makes them very concerned. Oh my gosh, this guy has been continuing to groom her. What?
Right.
And now we're terrified because if he has her, he's going to kill her. Why else would he have her? You know, they have no idea that he's been communicating with this child for quite some time before that. Like, they're thinking this just sort of popped up and she like reacted to whatever he had just done. And oh yeah, like, okay, I'll go with you. And so they're thinking, I remember Heather says on the 911 call something like, she's just a baby. Like, she's just a baby. She's stupid. She doesn't know any better. She's just a baby. Like, you have to do something. She doesn't understand, like, that he would hurt her. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Heather gets it as a mom. And so Erin still isn't sure that that's what happened. So in fact, when he does leave, the first place he goes is behind their, like a sort of a cul-de-sac kind of thing in the woods behind their house, just in case that because that's kind of like a
Kids hang out there.
yeah, and where you would go and nobody would be there, nobody would be around or could see you from the road. But so Heather calls 911, and that phone call is painful for a mother to hear, much less to experience. I mean, she's hysterical. And you can hear Erin in the background. I don't know if the prosecutors ever realized that because there's also some radio traffic in the background. But he's talking to sister-in-law by that time. And Heather Spencer says something to him like, what's his car like? You know, what does his car look like or whatever. So Erin's telling her things to tell the 911 operator. At one point, the dispatcher says, like, we'll send a car to your house. And she says, well, don't put a police car outside my house, because if he comes back here, he's definitely going to kill her if he sees the police, you know?
Yeah.
And so,
Smart.
I'm sorry.
Smart.
So, yeah. So, and then, so Erin leaves right about the end of that 911 call because he's there at the end of it. You can hear him. And then he hops in his truck and he drives. So he lives on like a rural highway that I think is like, I want to say 12 miles long. I'm not real good at that, but I just drove it 2 hours ago. And every time I drive it from the Dollar General, which I'm about to tell you the significance of, because isn't there always a Dollar General
Yes.
involved?
There is.
So from the Dollar General to their house, every time I drive it, I'm surprised at how long it takes me. Like, it seems like it would be a short drive, but when you do it, you're like, oh, this is way longer. So he goes down to the end of his highway where the DG is, and he sees Fossler's truck with the child in the passenger seat turning on to his highway. So they're going opposite directions, essentially. He sees Fossler kind of push her down, like get down. Like he doesn't want Erin to see her. And so Erin does a U-turn and gets behind Fossler and starts honking and, screaming, flashing his lights, pull over. And Fossler, of course, speeds up. Erin says they're doing, around 100 miles an hour.
Wow.
Down this highway. And I think he's maybe even bumping his bumper. Like, come on, man. And nothing. So they actually go past Erin's house, and Erin's not thinking, oh, maybe this is all fine, and he's just going to drop her off. Like, I should just go home and turn the lights off and like hope he didn't see me, and she'll just be dropped off at home. Like he's like thinking, psychopath is like fucking with my child's brain and us, and like is he like going to come hold us hostage while he's got my daughter as a captive, or is he kidnapping her? He's like going to take her to Indiana, or like what? I mean, he didn't know they had been gone. Does that make sense?
Right.
Like,
yeah, right.
So he chases them all the way down to the other end of the highway. So both ends are capped by perpendicular other highways. So when they get to the other end, which this is interesting to me, they have to slow down almost to a stop, if not a stop, because there's, it's this way. And at that point, this is an important thing that I would have brought out at trial. At that point, Erin, if he just wanted to kill Fossler, he could have shot him in the back of the head without any risk and gotten his daughter out of that car.
Right.
But he didn't. He bumped his bumper and honked and yelled out the window. You know what else could have happened is Fossler could have pushed her out of the car. Get out of my car, and he could have sped off.
Yeah.
And there's no way Erin would have caught up with him. Nothing. But that's not what happened. He accelerates, takes that left. That's when Erin takes the opportunity to catch that back left bumper corner and pit him into that driveway. And I want to say something about that in a minute, but I'll come back to it so we can get to the juicy part. So he pits him into the driveway. Erin's truck, here's driveway with Fossler. Erin's truck is like down a little, so it's not really in that close of proximity. That's why I'm saying that. The lights are facing the other way, and it's not blocking the driveway. There's no light out there. I mean, it is pitch black. I can't see your hand in front of your face. So the only light is from the headlights of Fossler's car and to some extent the taillights. So Erin gets out, runs up sort of near the back left taillight of Fossler's truck and starts yelling. There's various reports of what was yelled, but I think everybody agrees all of it was yelled. I'm sure that there was some, you piece of shit motherfucker, I can't believe you did this to my fucking kid. Right. But there's also the get the fuck out of the car and get on the ground, and I also think it's important to note that Fossler could have gotten out of that car and run off. There's one around him. He could have taken off right then, but he didn't do that. Instead, when he's still in the car with the child, he's looking for a weapon. He's looking for a knife. He's telling her to look for a knife. She's not clear if he found the knife. He's kind of, frantically looking for a weapon. She knows he gets out of the car with, I think she says 2 things in his hands. He gets out the driver's side, like his door's open, so he's kind of standing in front of that door. So if you can picture this, and I actually had someone recreate this so that we can show the jury, he's backlit, right? Like the only light is behind him. So he gets out in an aggressive posture and sort of moves towards Erin. Okay, he says, fuck you. He's got something at least in his right hand that he's holding up as if it's a weapon. Like obviously that he is trying to make it look like a weapon.
He's brandishing it, right?
Brandishing it. The child says that's true. That she said all that was true. And Erin unloads on him. Now, the prosecutor bitched so much about, 15 shots and shot in the back and all this bullshit. And it's like, have you investigated this? Because I have. And there's some important points to be made here, in addition to what Mike said about, being in the military. Number one, there's a witness who saw, he just lives on that highway that Erin lives on, but towards the end, he sees these 2 chase each other, right? And he says exactly what Erin says Erin was doing. And then he said he hears the gunshots and he says they're all in super quick succession in like 2 minutes or 2 seconds, which people think is crazy. But guess what? You can unload that clip. If you're an experienced gun user, it's 1.5 to 3 seconds to unload a 16-round clip.
Right.
You know, now if I were doing it, that definitely wouldn't have worked out. I would have shot myself in the leg and I'd still have 13 bullets in there trying to figure out how to get them out. Okay. But Erin knew what he was doing. 15 of those 16 shots hit Michael Fossler and the other one hit the door, like on the outside edge. That's important because there isn't a hesitation. There isn't a moment of, should I keep shooting him? It truly is, you shoot until the threat is abated. Now, Erin also says that he dives into that Fossler dives into the ditch. He makes a comment in the car after the arrest that he rolled into the ditch, and the prosecutor's saying, like, sort of using that as he collapses. But Erin doesn't say that. He says he's trying to get out of the line of fire. He's not falling down.
Right.
And he does take some to the back, but that's not because Erin is shooting him in the back. It's because he's spinning and falling into the ditch. Now, I'm not just making this up. I actually talked to the medical examiner several times. And what she says is a few things that are kind of important. One, he is loaded up on Viagra. Two, she cannot say where anyone was when any of those shots hit him because they're on different planes and they're moving back and forth to different planes and they're both turning around and around. So she's like, there's no way to say that Erin was over him or under him or any of that. It's confirmed that there's no close range. So it's over 3 feet or more away, every one of them. Not one of those bullets hit anything that would prevent him from speaking or would have prevented him from moving. So no spinal cord injury, no vocal cord injury, and there was no immediately fatal shot. There were fatal shots, but they took some time.
Yeah.
So after he's in the ditch, he's still talking and moving and messing with his waistband, and Erin thinks he still has a weapon, right? It's pitch black.
Right.
And he's got I imagine it as the shadow, right? Like of those lights, like you're getting ambient light from those. And so instead of shooting him more, which, Erin reloaded his gun, he had plenty of ammo. He hit him in the face a couple times and really is superficial, has no contribution to cause of death. The other thing about this that's frustrating is there's only a couple of Arkansas cases about this, and they're in the context of whether you can assert self-defense, like whether the jury would hear or would get a self-defense instruction. But they basically say that excessive force, it only defeats self-defense if those were the fatal uses of force. Does that make sense? So
I mean, I don't consider it excessive force if it's just overkill.
I don't either.
But it wasn't even overkill, it sounds like.
They would have to show that he wouldn't die. He wouldn't have died except for this excessive force. And there's no way that was ever going to be proven because the ME said, no way, no how. And logic tells me that given Erin's history and experience with a firearm, it's pretty likely that those first shots were center mass.
Right.
I'll bet you that it was the first couple of shots that took him down ultimately, Right. And so that's essentially what happened. And then there's the whole aftermath at the scene. Erin calls Heather, our kid's safe, calls 911. I've killed this guy that kidnapped my kid. And then, the police come and treat him like a criminal and put him in the back of a car. And he's got a shoulder injury from being a paratrooper in the military, and he's in severe pain and they don't care. And then the meth pipe thing where suddenly a meth pipe appears, things get shadier and shadier as the night progresses. And
before we get there, I just want to talk about the initial charge. They initially charged him with first-degree murder.
Well, yeah. So the way it works here, I don't know how it works where you guys are, but the police arrest on probable cause. And then the charge has to be filed by the prosecutor in circuit court before you're actually formally charged. So the police make the arrest on a first-degree murder allegation, and then when it's filed, so formally charged, it's charged a second.
So they were trying to push a first-degree murder charge.
Well, I mean, Staley says in the press back then, like, I would have done the same thing, and I don't advocate for charges. I just, get the evidence. But I mean, it's your agency's affidavit. So if I'm the affiant, I'm saying here's what I'm doing and here's what I'm not doing.
Right.
Like the prosecutor can't arrest somebody without a police officer. So
right.
You got a little more control over that than you think.
So, and tell us about what was their theory initially, or at some point trying to push a scenario where this was planned somehow?
So, I mean, that's such a, yes and no. They were sort of pushing this idea of premeditation, but without alleging premeditation, because that would be absolutely ridiculous. So it was kind of a hybrid. Like we're going to sort of prove premeditation, and that should prove purpose. I mean, I don't know about you, but there's a lot of people that I don't like that would not make me sad if they were not on this earth anymore. And if, like you said earlier, if they later come in my house, I'm going to shoot them.
Right.
I'm not going to be sad about that either. And I'm also not going to be sad if someone else, has to protect themselves and shoot that person. So disliking someone and wishing they were dead is a real different thing.
Yeah.
Than killing them in cold blood, And the other thing is Erin wasn't ever shy about that.
Right.
Meditation usually doesn't happen in the open, right? Where you're just telling the police, I think I'm going to kill this person in a few months. I really would like to. I'm going to see if I can work that out. And I mean, he says it when they come to the house. He says it to them the next day when he takes all of her devices and signs consent forms and takes her to be interviewed, and he's interviewed Heather. I mean, he's very no, I'd rather put him in the ground, but I'm not going to do that because that's not the right thing to do. And I mean, and also he's very religious. Taking a life is not something he wants to do, but he will do it if it's necessary. So I just don't think that makes any sense. I think that's just what a dad would feel. And he did everything right as far as cooperating and consenting, and he sat quiet.
Yeah. And look, he was out on bond for 3 months. That narrative of the vigilanteism thing that I was screaming at people, this isn't that. If it was a vigilante type thing, Erin would have gone the day that he walked out on bond and put him down. We're talking about 3 months later. It's not until this guy continues to groom his daughter and he finds that she's missing at 12:30 at night out of her bed that this thing becomes a thing. So I mean, I've always rejected any notion of the concept of this being vigilanteism because it's simply not.
That night, this guy was committing the very crimes that he was already charged with committing. He was literally in the act of committing a crime against this child. Why are we even talking about this?
Yeah.
The other thing that's frustrating about that too is that they use that whole Leanna thing, where he goes to her house and asks information about Fosler, and that somehow turns into he was planning to kill him. Well, we had testimony that the officers went to her house and straight to Erin's house, and Erin's there. He doesn't go try to find him with that information. But you know what he does do? He wants to know if he sees this guy around his house. And then the freaking cops, who never showed up, by the way, they wouldn't have known what they were looking for if Erin hadn't given them that information over 911 that night. You know what I'm saying? It's totally rational that he wanted to know what kind of car this guy drove and who is this guy. And
yes,
I would.
That was probably could have done it a different way, but doesn't mean that he was going to go kill him. In fact,
and even if it's something that in the moment he wanted to do and he didn't do it. And at the time he did, it was like the murderer was literally ripping, your family, killed half of them and ripping some out the door. I mean, it needed to be done in that moment. So like we were all saying,
The minute I find out about this guy doing this to my kid, I'm like on the internet looking up this guy and trying to find out everything that I can. You bet your ass if he gets out on bond, I'm going to figure out what he's driving so I can keep an eye out for him. I mean, like that's common sense. There's nothing untoward, or it's not significant as to Erin wanting to go, kill this guy just out of the blue. Like none of that makes any sense. It's that was always something that was so ridiculous. And I was curious. I mean, did you get the sense that at trial, had it made it to trial, that would have been kind of the narrative that they were pushing? Like I know that one of the things that they were consistently saying is, oh, well, why didn't Erin call 911 when he's in a 100-mile-an-hour high-speed chase with this guy who has his daughter in his car? And I'm like, wait, they already called 911. Where are the cops? There's only so many roads that they can be on back there. I mean,
this one really gets me wound up, because you think that people in Arkansas think that they are required to call the police multiple times before they take their own safety more seriously and defend themselves. Like, no.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So I want to address that, but I also want to address something you said a minute ago. Their narrative is everything that we talked about, plus the fact that she, quote, left willingly.
Oh, which just
the kidnapping statute, right? So, like, how many people do you think, reasonable people, right? Because that's the standard, a reasonable person in this situation, what would their reasonable belief be? Like, how many people do you think would have thought, I wonder if this is actually legally kidnapping? We should go pull the statute before we determine if we can use deadly force to save our child.
Well, I also don't think it's a reasonable person would have assumed she left willingly. There was no reason for him to think she left willingly.
Well, you and I, most reasonable people wouldn't think a 14-year-old could make that choice to leave willingly in order to be sexually assaulted. That doesn't make any sense. I mean, they knew that she had not been ripped out of her bed. I mean,
How?
I think they reasonably inferred that, I guess, because of the cousin saying he's been talking to her and it looked like her bed was stuffed. I mean, I don't think that they assumed that I don't think they assumed either way. I think the assumption was that he had continued to groom her, because that's what that was true. He's been sending her money, he's telling her all these things, and that she couldn't understand the danger that she was in, which was totally accurate.
But isn't it still kidnapping if I take you, if you come with me willingly and you don't realize I'm about to kill you, but now I'm taking you and I'm going to go kill you? Like, doesn't it become kidnapping at the point where you take me,
It becomes kidnapping at the point that you are unable to leave of your own volition.
right.
But you wouldn't be kidnapped initially unless someone tricked you into going, forced you to go.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think it's a trick if you don't know that you're going to be killed. And her parents had a very reasonable, fair belief that this guy very well not only could be wanting to sexually assault her, but also to make the witness disappear forever.
And it's also significant that Erin, that you stated, which I never knew for certain, but I was pretty confident because I kept saying it on lives. He drove by the house, like during the high-speed chase. He could have easily have pulled over and just pushed her out of the car and kept going. Instead of driving past the house. When Erin sees him drive past their house, you're assuming the worst is a reasonable person, because there was nothing that would have stopped Fossler from slamming on the brakes, pushing her out of the car, and then taking off. Because what Erin said is Erin doing in that situation, he's probably stopping from chasing him.
So the deal is, like, once he sees Erin, he's not going to stop. And it's almost like the prosecutors are suggesting that Erin was wrong to ever go look for her in the first place, which is totally asinine, And like, so he was supposed to go, oh, she's with a Fosler, so I'll just go home. I mean, you cannot reasonably suggest that this father shouldn't have looked for his daughter or shouldn't have tried to get her out of that car. And that's sort of what they insinuated. So you brought up the 911 thing. This one really, really gets me going, because we know Heather called 911. Heather's son called 911. Right after that, that's 2 phone calls. Okay. Then, when Erin is going down the highway in front of his house, most of that highway has no service. So when Allie, when you and I were talking and I said I'm almost to the interstate, like even at the end of that road, it's very spotty. At the other end, it doesn't exist at all, period. And the current Sheriff Staley, he lives at one end of that highway and parks constantly at the other end to use his phone before he goes home. He told people on phone calls that, yeah, you can't get any service on that road. So, like, he couldn't have called 911. But most importantly, it doesn't fucking matter.
Right.
Because the law doesn't say, be sure to call the cops before you use deadly force in defense of yourself or another person. It does not say that. It certainly doesn't say call twice or 3 fucking times. And what difference would it have made? 0, unless you guys were sitting at home. Well, that's not a real important call. We're just really not going to respond. Like, it wouldn't have mattered. Like, were you guys, like, just, you know, kind of putting along? And, like, maybe if we called 3 times, you would have cranked it up and actually gotten there?
Right.
Because it sounds to me like what would have happened is we're on our way, and he still would have chased Fossler, because otherwise you never have found him. Like, he would have
You're not going to just sit there.
With that child. Like, hey, he took a left on highway whatever. Like, I hope you can find him. That is definitely not the law. You definitely don't have to do that.
So
even back when we had the retreat language, which doesn't apply here, you only had to retreat if you could do so with complete safety. So tell me how that child was 100% assured to be safe if he called 911 and stood down.
All right, before you guys continue, Erin, sadly have to run. I'm going to leave you in Allie's capable hands, and I'll be listening. I've got to bring my daughter somewhere that popped up after the fact. So, all right, you guys, Erin, thank you so much. And I'm hoping that you'll come on a lot more, because
I would love to.
We love you.
Now, you know?
And you're amazing. And I didn't get to congratulate you. That would have been the first thing I meant to do. You guys did an amazing job for Erin. Justice was served. I'm super proud of you. And I think that you guys just did a fabulous job representing him.
Oh, thanks. And thanks for following along and being there and coming to court and all the things you guys did. It was great. And I would love to come on as many times as you'll have me.
Awesome. Well, you guys keep talking. I'm going to be listening on the drive.
So I wonder if because we talk a lot about discretion and prosecutorial discretion. And I don't know if you feel comfortable or even can give us any of your internal thought on what in the hell was really going on that this case was even brought.
You know, I will say the deputy prosecutor who handled it, I've known a long time, and I like him, and I think he's a good person. I had some frank conversations with him about this, and I could hear the words coming out of his mouth, but none of them make a lick of sense, you know? And I don't believe, I think the powers that be had different motives, and he was just made to carry out, you know, their orders, and that he came to sort of drink the Kool-Aid. You know, he would tell you, you know, he was waiting on the opportunity, and he was so angry, and he should have called 911, and he shouldn't have shot him that many times, and he shouldn't have said nasty things about him afterwards. And I mean, every time we talked about it, I'd go, every time you tell the story, you forget the part where Fosler picked her up to sexually assault her and that she was a child. Like, you just leave that out of your whole story. I don't know how. I mean, I remember one time talking to him, and every time it got to that point, I'd interrupt him and say, and now Fosler picks her up, and she's 16, and he's going to have sex with her, and that's
14,
it. 14, sorry. Like, that's the end of the analysis. Like, once you get to that, nothing else matters. Nothing. In my opinion, nothing matters. So I think there's that, and Lonoke has always been a political cesspool, and it's hard not to believe, based on everything else that happened along with the unreasonableness of this charge, it's hard not to believe that there were people pulling strings there. I mean, I know Staley and Fosler's daughter went to high school together and were friends, and, you know, it's a small town, and frankly, that, like I said, that political environment's known for I would say not treating everybody the same, you know.
Well, and I'll say, when you tell stories like they didn't really go through the digital evidence and they didn't investigate his crimes after he is no longer alive, it makes you think, why the hell was this case brought? What are they hiding? And is there something they didn't want uncovered by digging into all of that evidence? Like, you can't help but your mind, go there on this case.
Well, and
but
the other thing is, like, Mike and I, right after this happened, Mike is the initial connection because he's very active in the gun rights organizations and helping with the legislation and stuff. And that's kind of the connection there. And I'm the boss. And so I went like, no way they're going to charge this guy. That's insane, And then we're kind of talking to him and we're like, just put it to a grand jury. I mean, we don't use grand juries much in Arkansas, but it is permitted. It's usually used when there is a highly public and highly, contested or questionable case, just like this.
Right.
And historically it's been used for that purpose. But listen, if I were a prosecutor, you wouldn't have to tell me twice. Yes, I will be putting that to my community. Like, this is a close call. And so they had a total out and they didn't do that. And I can't figure out why. It's the same with the recusal. Like, if I've been Judge Elmore, like, bye. I don't need this in my life. I'm about to retire. Like, why would I want to be in the middle of this, So I was pretty shocked that they charged him, and they did it after we were cooperative, and, it just really pissed me off. And I think, how I feel about it because I made a public statement immediately about what a bunch of idiot jerks these people were. You'd also think that they would like go and do some investigating and like, what kind of person was Michael Fossler really?
Right.
And what kind of person was Aaron Spencer really?
Really.
And what does the medical examiner say? And what do the witnesses say?
Were there any witnesses? You mentioned a guy that had heard the shots. Were there any other witnesses that we hadn't heard from that were crucial?
Yeah. Interestingly, there was a couple in a car that pulled up right after the shooting when Erin is like dialing 911. And this is so weird. The guy, I can't remember exactly when I learned about this, but it's way later because this guy is in jail in Staley's like drug program and suddenly pops up. It's like, well, that's weird. This has like been super publicized and he didn't tell anybody that he was at the scene. Right. But he does, he's helpful. He pulls up and he's like, Erin is, like clearly freaking out. And like, he's like, oh my God, I just had to kill this guy. He kidnapped my daughter. I'm trying to call 911. It was nothing. It was good. It was consistent with what Erin always said happened. So there was nothing weird about it. The other thing I was going to tell you earlier is that, the prosecutor said something in the press the other day about he wrecked Fossler's truck and he could have hurt his daughter and he shot Fossler and she could have been injured. These are the kinds of things that the public needs to know are just hyperbolic loads of bullshit. Okay. So first, the pit maneuver was about the most successful pit maneuver anyone's ever seen. I talked to the state police guy who supposedly did some kind of accident reconstruction. It was going to be the state's witness. And I had my own experts. And he was like, yeah, that was barely even a bump. That, it didn't trigger any of the like airbags or wreck protocol in the internal parts of the truck. And it looked like basically he parked it in a driveway perfectly. There was a post that was a piece of dead wood that got knocked over. The guy, the trooper was like, yeah, it was really good. I went, he was like the best one I've seen. He was like, me too. It was a great job. I was like, okay, well, you're going to be my witness. So there's no wreck. There's no danger. There's no, like, give me a break. And then they sent me almost like right before trial. I don't remember if it was the January trial or the summer trial, but they had taken the time. Here we are like 2 years later to go measure where the shots would have hit Fossler versus where the child was in the car. And they were like trying to make some like, it was reckless and he could have hurt her. And I can't remember the exact number, but it was like 6 to 7 feet. Like, really? like even I could probably shoot somebody and not injure someone 7 feet away.
Right.
Come on. So
So
it's just ignoring those realities and building a story and building a spin and building a narrative that's just false.
So they're still trying to like defend the fact that they even brought the charges. Is that what these comments that you're referencing are even about?
Yes, they have. There's a local, I won't even call it a newspaper in Lonoke, that just is like just their mouthpiece. Like they don't call us or anyone else. They just let them say whatever and put it in the paper. And so he just made these comments, and he made some comments about things Erin said after the shooting about, it's hard to kill evil, but it can be done. And he's a pedophile. And I mean, Erin was saying he was pissed at that point. Your adrenaline's going, and now you're angry because you've had to kill this guy in front of your child, and the cops didn't do anything, and they didn't show up, and now they're treating you like a criminal, and you're like, he was actually in pain the way they were handcuffing him, and he was worried about her, and but he's like, don't spend my tax dollars, like fuck that guy, and that's all after the fact, so that doesn't inform before the fact, and also. Yeah. Agreed.
Right.
Why don't you tell us about actual evidence, not what you think or feel about how Erin reacted or spoke about it or felt about it, like evidence.
Or saved his daughter's life.
I mean,
So let's go to, what, before we get to the other stuff that happened at the crime scene with the judge, the trial judge, why do you think is she still on the bench, or she's off the bench?
She is on the bench until the end of the year.
Okay. So why do you think she went through, there was this, for those of you that don't know out there was a gag order that gagged basically the entire free world to the point that the Supreme Court was like, no, this is ridiculous. This is bullshit. Undo it. But what do you think, the actual motivating, do you think she was upset that it was this is a guy she let out on bail? Or I can't make sense of why she went to such extremes, because it didn't seem like it was to protect the defendant.
Oh, no. I remember the Supreme Court's so are we gagged? Here we are, oral argument. Are we under this gag order? Because as written, it seems like we are. I'm like, yeah, we're all in violation of it right now. So it's hard to say, except that she has become very difficult in general. And in my opinion, those people in those positions relative to the criminal justice system, the sheriff, the prosecutor, her, they've been in those positions too long, and it's sort of like her castle. So she does whatever she wants, and she does not take anybody questioning her or reviewing anything that she does. And so you can look at other cases. She was if there was anything in a case that touched on a child, she would just be seal the charging document, seal the case, seal the, that's not right. That's not the way that works. And so she just acts as if her word is the final word on everything, and nobody's going to criticize anybody. I'm going to control, micromanage everything, and that's going to require me to make y'all, gag all of you. But there were some counties like that one, just we don't want people talking about this because it might harm the state's case. It might make people actually sympathize with the defendant, and all defendants are bad in here, and I say what happens to them.
Wow. And I mean, for another point that a lot of people might not know, and if you're new to this case, you definitely don't know, is that there were some pretrial rulings that once the judge, because eventually the judge was removed. And why don't you tell us, what do you think the breaking point was for that? Or was it was just oh, we're switching the judge?
I don't know. So, I mean, as a lawyer, to have an extraordinary writ granted in any case is pretty wild. I mean, during the trial portion, there's some appellate record stuff, but trial portion, I can't even think if I've ever filed an extraordinary writ in the trial, the pretrial part of a criminal case. So it's a real rarity. So to have them granted on the gag order, was pretty wild. And then to have 3 judges out of 7 say that they thought she should be removed from the case then was like, I was shocked by that.
Right.
Pleasantly, but still. And so then, I mean, I remember talking to the prosecutor, like, don't you think that she should just recuse? Like, almost half the court's already basically said that's reversible error. Why would you want to try the case? If you've got a conviction, there's, you know, a real possibility that it would be reversed for that. But then we got into the situation of I didn't really want to delay the trial because of everything else that was happening. And so it's kind of like, I can deal with this. Like I can handle her. But then it just starts chipping away at everything, right? It's like one thing at a time. She's kicking people out of the courtroom. She's trying to make the defense and the defendant look bad, make everybody think there's a reason to be scared or think that we're doing something wrong, none of which was true. And she was also writing orders and things that didn't make legal sense and were like, we just needed a lot more structure and real legal judging.
Thoughtful.
I don't know how to say that, but like, you know, I mean, I feel bad saying that, but, and then she, you know, we're complaining about public access, right? Like she didn't let people in the arraignment, then the gag order, and the Supreme Court was real clear about what has to happen before you can, you know, abridge the public's right of access and all those things. And so then she issues that ridiculous order that says, you know, there's going to be essentially 20 seats or less when you do the math for the press. And here's all of these conditions that have to be met. Some of which don't make sense. Like I remember one press person, there was some requirement for like a press card or something. And he was like, what is that? Like, we don't even do that in Arkansas. Like, what are we, like, this makes no sense. And it also said no phones, and it did cover attorneys. She ended up saying, oh, I didn't mean it to cover attorneys, but she had made us put our phones and computers and stuff up at that pretrial hearing. So I actually was concerned about asking them to remove her. We had a big debate around here because there's no process for that. Under Arkansas law, you have to wait until after the trial, and if you're convicted, you appeal the recusal issue. So it's totally ineffective. And I didn't want to overstep, you know, like over ask. But I was persuaded by my team that it was worth the ask, and we didn't over ask, right? We like addressed the issues and then went, you know, it could be
either way
that, you know, you 3 of you said before that you could remove her. So you've acknowledged that you have this authority.
right.
But I was pretty shocked that they removed her. That's only happened one other time that I know of, maybe 2, but it was very different circumstances where they removed a judge from like all cases on a certain subject because of a broader issue. Does that make sense? And
Right.
so that's like, that was really an extraordinary move. But it had to happen. I mean,
And I can't remember in that motion, did you mention the fact that she was making rulings? Because I know, and some of the rulings were addressed once you got a new judge, but I know when we were covering them, I was like pulling up the law, like specifically about his being Michael Fossler's reputation and the things known to him. In the motion that ultimately went to her being recused, did it mention that she was making? No, it didn't even mention
no, because under Arkansas law, you can't base a
right.
motion on a ruling.
On a ruling. So, but after you got a new judge and they reconsidered, before we even get to how dismissal came, but just several, you know, minor motions in limine that should have been granted as a matter of course or denied as a matter of course, and the judge makes the right ruling on the right law. Do you think that, I mean, who's the judge? Is there a judge going to be moving into to that first judge's place? Like that's going to have an impact on Lonoke County. Like, hey, maybe we should take this shit more seriously. And when we're making rulings, and like that the judges might kind of shift from being like you said, this is my castle, I can do as I please.
Well, she's the only one I think that does criminal.
Someone's going to be taking her place, though, right?
Yeah, and it's going to be somebody that's not been a judge before. And yes. So now I consider this one of the most significant things that happened is that we sort of broke up the cabal of Lonoke County. The sheriff's out, the prosecutor's out, the judge is out, and it's going to be all new folks. And I definitely think that this sent a different message than what has been happening for 15, 20 years. I mean, it's not only that those people are out, but the community finally saw that they don't have to take this anymore.
Right.
That they can make a difference by voting and by being vocal. And, everybody I know over there had sort of like given up on that. Oh, that's just how it is.
That's how it is in Lonoke County.
Yeah. And nobody thought it was fair or, everybody thought that judge is corrupt and the prosecutor's corrupt and the sheriff's corrupt as long as I can remember, And so I think this sends a bigger message. And yes, I think the people that take those positions will be a lot more for the people than for the public officials and for themselves.
Right.
And I don't know if you've heard, but the prosecutor's son is the chief of police of the Lonoke PD, and what I've heard is that he's been terminated for some impropriety that's being investigated.
Wow.
Well, that's just take them all out.
Wow, there's going to be a real change in the government there. I mean, that it took something like this for it to happen, for everyone to be like, what in the actual fuck is going on? Because it does make you think they're covering up like an entire government,
there are things that have happened
sex ring or
past
something
that we thought would have an effect. I remember years ago, one of my clients got pregnant at the jail. And she was a federal pretrial inmate, and there were already problems around there. And I remember thinking, this is going to be the thing that finally gets someone's attention.
Right.
In fact, Staley addressed that in an interview a year ago and just made up a whole nother story. And so that people just,
it was the feds.
It goes, it's like when he beat that inmate and it was on video, that should have had some effect, because people around there felt that if they took a position against him or against Elmore, against Chuck Graham or his office, that they would have hell to pay because they were retaliatory. Staley, you would be treated differently, and that's wrong.
I know Bob and I were on our way home when you got the order coming down about the change of judge, but people want to know, how did you feel when that order came down, and how did the Spencers feel? And I guess for you just to describe how that felt for the defense and overall.
Removing the judge?
Yep.
Well, okay, so you were at that hearing, right, where we had Carrie. So, and you might remember that week I had filed 3 different things saying, you don't take this testimony right now. This is not a pretrial issue. 1, 2, there was about to be that big snowstorm and I didn't want her to get stuck here. And the prosecutor agreed, we don't need to be doing this right now, especially since we were set for trial the next week. You don't want that to be in the newspaper right when you're picking your jury. It was going to be hard enough. So we wanted to delay it, but she professed not to have read any of those because, what's she supposed to be doing? Acting like a judge. So we get there and you remember I'm explaining all this to her and saying, there's multiple pleadings that have addressed this. And at one point she's laughing and snickering. And I said something like, I'd like the record to reflect the court's demeanor right now.
I do remember that.
You're actually being laughing and being inappropriate. Aaron, after court, Aaron was like, oh my God, the minute that those first words came out of your mouth, he's like, my brow immediately got sweaty. And I was like, oh God, here it goes. Because I told him, I'm probably going to be holding contempt before we get there. He's like, I thought, oh, it's today. It's today. But she at that point was like, oh no, I'm not doing anything. Just letting you make your argument. And then she's like, okay, that's fine. That's what I was always going to do. I told you that was fine. Then why did you make me spend all this money and fly this person here? So I was pretty pissed about that. I only wish I'd gotten that order 2 hours earlier because I would have stopped mid-sentence and been like, bye. You're out, sister.
Right.
Later, But when it came through, I remember because, we get those docket entry emails first and it was petition, writ granted, order vacated, judge removed. And I went, holy shit! I mean, I like screamed as loud as I could, and everyone went, "Oh my God, what?" And like no one could. I mean, we were all just stunned.
Right. And I'm assuming that you and the Spencers both felt like, wow, our defense has new life. Like we get to actually might be able to present our actual defense. Like it like wave of relief.
Well, and we were also right in the middle of that snow thing. And so she was insistent that we start the trial like whatever day school was going to go back into session, but the snowstorm hadn't started yet. And it's like, this isn't going to work, lady. Like, you have to call a jury in. You're not going to be able to get all the jurors, that we need there. And it's just like, you couldn't get, like, she wouldn't even listen to us, much less listen to reason. And so there was also this like, oh gosh, she's out, and we're going to be able to have a normal trial.
Right.
Where like she had told us that there was just no room at the courthouse for us or our witnesses. And I mean, like, I don't know what she thought we were going to do. She was just very not accommodating. We couldn't have tables over by the witness or by the podium. She was going to make me walk across the room to have exhibits, and I'm only allowed to talk at the podium. I mean, it's just everything. She's made everything really hard and ineffective. And so, yeah, we were like, we're going to have a real trial with a real judge, and we're not going to have to do it piecemeal, show up a bunch of days when we don't have enough jurors, or we can't get here, or the witness can't get here, And it gave us also hope because, there's drawbacks of having elected judges, right? They have to be reelected, which means they don't normally want to do things for defendants, even when they should. So there's that, like, having a retired judge who doesn't have that weight, gives you hope for a much fairer process and decision. And also, I, of course, immediately called everyone that I know to find out if they knew this judge. And I mean, there wasn't one negative thing said about him from prosecutors or defense attorneys. It was all like, he is great. He is wonderful. And I second, third, and fourth that all day long.
Right. All right. So now let's go back to the crime scene, and we're going to go to what was basically the underlying primary reason for the case getting dismissed. So you talked a little bit about it, about that Fossler had all these cameras in his car. So for people who don't know anything about what happened and how this case came to get dismissed and what kind of nonsense took place in regards to that, give us the overview.
The overview.
So we had cameras. Yeah, like that there were cameras, what they were designed to do, and then what happened with them.
So I'm trying to think where to start with this. So apparently, Michael Fossler had a dash cam that stuck on his like front windshield, but it had a forward-facing camera and it had a side camera that sort of rotated. So it basically would get inside the truck and like towards the rear, or if you pointed it like towards the side rear. But it also captured sound. And he had apparently gotten it because he was doing he got it after he was arrested and released. And because he was afraid that someone like Erin would find him doing what he was found doing. And so that's why he had it. And so the child actually...
Or to watch the abuse that he perpetrated on children in cars.
Like, there's some things that's what we thought too. But that was what she told the interviewer that night. And it was kind of like not the point of the question, but she mentions like he had this thing because, and whatever. And so I actually don't find out that dash cam existed until the summer of 25. So from October of 2024 to summer of 2025. Once I learn about it, I go look back at all the body cam footage and the photographs and can clearly see it. I mean, it's pitch black out there and it's lit up because it's on. And so it's like a little TV screen. Right. When I'm looking at that without that knowledge, I can't figure out what that is, but it's not, it's like maybe that's a reflection from someone's flashlight in the rearview mirror or like
someone's body cam, the cops pointing back. And just so people understand, when Erin says she didn't know about it, She got the police reports. She got the discovery. It was not mentioned. It was,
Yeah, it was
excluded
like,
from everything.
so you also feel like when you're looking at those body cam things, like obviously if there was a dash cam on, somebody would have gotten it and put it in evidence and I would know about it. So my brain isn't thinking like, is that a dash cam that someone's hidden from me? You know,
Right.
that doesn't. So what I find out later is that, so by the time I find out about it in the summer, I find out because there is an email from the prosecutor forwarding an email from the detective that says, hey, by the way, there was like a dash cam in Fossler's truck and the SD card went missing and no one knows where it is. And so that's all. It didn't have anything on it though, because McCain looked at it and it was just all irrelevant. And so nothing to see here.
Right.
And I'm like, what? And I didn't make a big deal about it then. I started trying to figure things out first, like going to try to get records, starting to FOIA things. And frankly, if I hadn't FOIA'd an evidence report from the sheriff's office, I would never know the things that ended up winning the defense motion to dismiss. And the irony is, I asked the sheriff's office a year later for the updated report, and they refused to give it to me until, like, I had to write them back 3 times and say, no, I will sue you over this tiny thing because I'm sick of your shit. And, you know, they're like, well, get it from the prosecutor. I'm like, I don't have to get it from the prosecutor. I can get it from you. The prosecutor never gave it to me, not once, still to this day.
Wow.
But I find out in the summer that it's just vanished. You know, it's no one's fault. It just disappeared. And start piecing together, like, oh, look, it's in that body cam. Why is it still there? You know, figure out that McCain leaves it in that truck until the very last minute, till every other officer's gone and the tow truck's towing Fossler's truck. He goes into that truck and just rips it off, breaks the, what am I saying? The thing that holds it on.
Like the
He doesn't take a
connector.
photograph of it, not one single one. So the photographs we have show it in the background, but like there's no like photograph of the dash. This is a piece of evidence, you know,
Right.
the evidence procedures. Rips it off of the bracket thing, puts it in his car, goes back to the police department. Meanwhile, all this other evidence is being handled appropriately, right? It's being packaged and with your initials, and it's being entered into their evidence system and kept in their evidence room, but not the dash cam that no one knows about. He takes it to his office and throws it on a shelf, and sometime that day he says, now he doesn't say this until this November or December of 2025, after I filed the motion to dismiss for the destruction, or the motion, whatever it was called, the due process motion. So keep that in mind. So he never, this is not a report. It's nowhere in any file. This is an affidavit attached to their response. Okay. He says that he got it out that day and looked at it, and it had like 4 files that were 15-minute long videos. And I don't know if he says this in the affidavit or when he testified, but there were some other folders that he just didn't even look in. They just looked like text folders. And so he put the SD card back in the camera. Now, keep in mind, this is a micro SD card. So he gets this, you know, pinky fingernail, and he puts it in an SD card and then puts that SD card in his computer, right? And so then he says, so he puts it back in the camera and puts that shit back on his shelf, still doesn't take it into evidence, doesn't do anything.
Doesn't document the fact that he watched it, that he claims he doesn't.
Write that down anywhere. Like, did that come from your memory a year and a half later? Like, you didn't write that down. So all of the other digital evidence goes to the Attorney General's office, and most of it is reported back in a week to 2 weeks. Okay, so just think about that. Like electronic devices, Fossler's, Erin's, the child's, like all of this stuff, but not the dash cam. About a month after that, in mid-November, it is taken to the Attorney General's office by another sheriff's officer. Okay, so it's like, hey, there's this dash cam. Can you deliver this to the AG's office? Sure. And then testimony was that at some later time, we don't know when, and I subpoenaed any communications between this AG's office and the sheriff's office, and I got 0 between this person at the AG's office and McCain or anyone at the sheriff's office about this camera. The only communications I got were a person later. So supposedly this person from the AG's office calls and says, there's no SD card in here. And everyone just says, oh my gosh, what? And they just search everywhere, high and low, everywhere in that sheriff's office, in every car. And they determine also through the AG's office that it doesn't have any memory, like internal memory. And they just don't know what happened. And so I guess nobody thinks to write that down or report it to anyone. No one could exactly remember when that happened. And it's like, well, I didn't hear about it till July. So did you hear about it in December or was it July? And they all kind of went like, oh, it's probably right before that. Well, that doesn't make any sense because all of the other digital evidence they get information about within a month at most, not even really a month. So like how much sense does it make that here this crucial piece of evidence they could have recorded the entire thing, nobody like thinks to care about that for 7 or 8 months? And then I get text messages between, so the original AG person who did the forensics went to like police training, and some other guy was, I guess, took her spot for the time being. And there's these messages where he sends McCain a text with a picture of the dash cam in the envelope, and it's like, hey, I found this sitting here. Like, do I need to do anything with it? So I'm not so sure if the AG's office has any better protocols. And McCain's like, oh no, Amber looked at that and there's no SD card or memory. And so, you don't need to do anything. I guess we'll come pick up other stuff and that, like, okay. I mean, just as if this was just, nothing. And,
but wasn't there also that they all turned off their body cams at some point in time?
Yeah, so after that, they don't actually put the body cam, enter it into evidence until October, I think. So way after that, and they make it look like they sent it to the AG's office on the same date they sent the other digital items a year prior, so that it doesn't look suspect, like it's like it's not handled appropriately.
Right.
And so also at the scene, the deputies have their body cams on, and one of the deputies who's like first on scene says that he saw the dash cam and told McCain about it. And McCain says, no, he didn't tell me that till 5 a.m. But the deputy says, I wasn't even there at 5 a.m., So when the detectives and sergeants and everybody gets there, they all start saying, turn your body cam off. There's actually a moment where one of the deputies' body cams comes back on and he's like, oh, my body cam's on. McCain's like, turn it off. And so the testimony, that was such a fun moment on
I'm sure.
Cross, yeah. Like, oh, thank you for this.
Thank you for that, Gem.
And I'm like, oh, that defeats the purpose of having a body cam. Like, that's so the public and the judge and me and everybody would not know what you were doing, right? It's like, yes, yes. It's probably a violation of policy. Yes. In fact, the policy is written to be like, also whatever you think, because all those policies are written so they can kind of wiggle out of them, but they knew that's wrong.
Right.
So it's not hard to think through this in a way that you sort of realize that there's no rational explanation other than one that is people fucking around with Erin's ability to defend himself.
Right.
Because it like, there's no, you just can't have that many things over that period of time and have, I mean, no one has proposed to me any other reasonable explanation. Being incompetent is not a reasonable explanation.
Erin,
were involved in this. That cannot be just incompetence.
Has Bob ever talked to you about the Richard Allen case?
Oh, maybe.
I mean, at that case, they had, so many things, everything from, body cams not on or erasing to interviews of witnesses missing, erasing. I mean, I can't even go through it all right now. And, Bob talked to the lawyer that handled that case. We were talking about that case, and we brought up how you have this motion was still pending. And Bob and he both really thought that it could get granted, like that because of everything that was going on. and you say all the words that you just say, and any one of our viewers or listeners, either one listening, be thinking, no. In Richard Allen's case, all of that was just explained away as, oops, those things happen. Can't prove any sort of, misconduct. Basically what the state was trying to argue in your case, that no, that's just stuff that happens. That's negligence at worst.
Oh, I mean, I've had destroyed evidence before that was pretty clear, and it's almost an unachievable burden to get relief. And it certainly is in a court with an elected judge and a defendant that nobody supports. That's why across the country, there are very few, like extraordinarily few cases where there's been relief. And usually it's not dismissal because there's some other lesser relief that can be given. So, I mean, it's a big, big deal. I have to think about, Erin and I were talking about this today. It's like, what was it? Was it Staley's relationship? Where did they just not like Erin because they thought that he was, a jerk because he was pissed? I mean, but when they turn their body cams off, like, what do you not want the public to hear? I mean, you're at a crime scene, first of all, like you're doing your job. You're not like at a strip club. So what is the problem?
Right.
And then what are you doing for those like 3 or 3.5 hours? Because the whole crime scene is right there at that truck and you're picking up shell casings. And so there's only so many of those and they don't even pick all those up. So what was happening? And it makes me think that they didn't want anyone to hear something that they were saying or doing at the scene.
Absolutely. That's one of the things that when you put all the pieces together makes my mind go, I cannot think that they weren't covering up some sort of human trafficking, deviant sexual conduct with children, like that something is going on within the ranks of the officials that they're trying to just keep out. Because it's like, why is all of this happening? Why are the body cams getting turned off? Why are you've got evidence of crimes against children. You're supposed to report those things to federal agencies, at least, investigate them, give parents some notice of, your child, this happened to, maybe talk to them so it doesn't happen in the future, whatever. They're not investigating crimes. They're not reviewing evidence. They're turning off their body cams. Things are going missing. There's gag orders. It's like, what are they all trying to hide? And that's just,
you throw the meth pipe in there, right? It's like meth pipe, turn off body cams, ditch the dash cam, I mean, and maybe it was just them acting like idiots at the scene, but even if that's true, they destroyed that knowing that it would exculpate Erin.
right.
And that is no,
And in just any other situation, you would think the police would even agree at this point, well, I would have killed that guy if it was my kid, type of thing. But so it's just so weird. When Erin's talking about the meth pipe, for those of you that don't know, when Aaron Spencer was put into the police car, they claimed that he had or ditched a meth pipe in the police car. This is there is no history of drugs here. There was the police came in contact with a meth user earlier that day. Is that correct? Like, they knew damn well it wasn't his.
I don't think it was that day.
Really?
I don't remember it being that day. And I went back. I had like an investigator go pull everybody that officer had arrested. So like every record of someone being in his car, and he hadn't had one in a long time.
Really?
Like, I still am like confused about, and I really don't. I'm not totally convinced that guy ever had that pipe. Like,
so they planted a meth pipe in the car to make Aaron Spencer look even worse.
And guess where they found that guy? Guess where he was when he's discovered? In jail in Lonoke. They kind of acted like, well, we always knew it wasn't Aaron's, but that's not how the police acted.
No.
At first. And
they charged him with it, right?
Do what?
They
No,
charged-
they didn't charge him with it, but it was very like, we, check our cars and, we're just going to like.
Well, you
okay,
guys had to file a special motion to exclude it.
I filed a special motion to exclude it because I didn't want them saying that it was his. And they got all pissed when we finally were like, you know what, never mind, because the DNA came back and then they said this other guy did it. That was all about them trying to save face because we were going to make a big shitstorm about that because Erin demanded a drug test and his fingerprints weren't on it and all that stuff. And they were like, well, if it wasn't relevant for you, when the shoe was on the other foot, like, do you not understand character evidence? Like, you're not a person. It's not admissible because you can't falsely accuse my client of being a drug addict, but I can talk about your cops being incompetent all day long.
Right.
So, like, no. But when you put all that together, it's like, what is going on here? And, they're at the scene before they turn their body cams off talking about and kind of talking shit to Erin about how he was so angry in July. And so, like, part of me feels like that one of the cops that sort of led that interaction kind of harbored that ill will because he can't stop talking about it every time he's around, every time he's on camera. So maybe there was something personal there. Or maybe it was that, you don't really want your community to know that it took 3 fucking calls to the police over 20 minutes to get help.
Right. I don't know what it's outrageous, but the judge, your new trial court judge, ultimately found that the police conduct or the prosecution, all of the conduct at issue was so egregious, it warranted dismissal.
Most shocking moment of my life.
Can you remember getting that? And did you convey it to Erin and Heather?
Yeah. So, one thing about me is I'm always like Mike is young, right? He's not lost a case that he thought he couldn't lose, right? Like you've had those cases where you're like, there's no way that I can lose this case. And then you do. And it's like, it changes you. It's horrible. He hasn't he hasn't quite had that experience yet. So he's like, I want to go try this. I don't care about these pretrial motions. Don't reply to that dismissal issue. Like, we're going to try this. And I'm going like, this is worth
the battle is won pretrial.
Yeah, and that's my brain, right? Like he's like the trial guy and he's like ready, he's got subpoenas out and I'm like over here doing academics. And so in fact, like the day before or that day, whichever day I filed the reply, he sent me that text of don't waste time. And I was like, you shut up, I'm doing this. You go do your thing, And so that afternoon, and I was going through some personal stuff with a sick family member. So I was like, you know what I mean? I was like calling funeral homes and then, it was like not a good day. And this email came through from the judge, but he emailed us a lot and it said something weird. Like he always ad-libbed stuff like, I'm going to go see my grandkids. Like, I hope everyone has a nice weekend, just like nice stuff. And it said something like, I really appreciate how like kind and professional y'all all have been or something. And I thought, what does that mean? I didn't register. And so I opened it and the first page had like the title of the document, but then it just recounted, I don't know what documents or historical information. And I didn't understand. So I'm a lawyer. So I flipped to the last page, right? That's what I did. Flipped to the last page and I'm just like, and then I think what my lawyers around me said is that I was like, holy shit. Oh my God. And then my 2 closest people come running in. They're like, what's wrong? And Megan, who's the greatest, and she's experienced. I'm like, come around here and read this. And what does it say? Like, did he just dismiss this case? And she goes, yes. And I was like, I'm reading that right. Like, and what you need to know, I was started to say this and then got off track, is I'm pretty negative. Mike always thinks we're going to win. And I'm always like, no, there's no way that's going to happen. Or we're not going to get. So Heather and Erin have learned that about me, right? Where like on the second writ, I'm like, look, this is very unlikely to be granted and no way they're removing the judge. And Heather's over here like, well, I'm going to pray. And I'm like, we could take all the prayers, but don't get your hopes up. Like, I don't want to give you false hope. No one's going to dismiss this case. No one's going to, And so we had this joke by the time it came to the dismissal that's what I always say. And she always says she'll pray. And it turns out that her praying has carried way more weight than anything I've done, because we've gotten 3 things that I said wouldn't happen done. So I was like freaking out. I text Erin and I'm like, can we get on Zoom? And he says yes. And then I realized I hadn't even read it. Like I was so excited that I was like,
Right.
oh, and I was like, maybe I should read it. Give me 10 minutes. And then, I was crying. And
So
then,
you didn't tell them yet what you were calling them about?
No. And I got on Zoom and then I couldn't talk. Like that he says, like you were like, I couldn't get words out of my mouth. And I was, teary. And then I was crying because once I saw him, he's like, what happened? What happened? He kind of thought that something had happened to someone,
Right.
And I was like so choked up. And then I went like, oh my God, he just dismissed the case. Because he sent us the order about half an hour before he published it publicly. And Erin was like, what? What'd you say? He had the same reaction, like, huh? And I said it again. And then he was like, what? No one's here. No one's at my house. I'm alone. I don't have anyone to tell. So it's like we were just sitting here like, oh, we want to scream and yell and like clap and hug. And we're on Zoom and no one's around us. So, but then, we started talking and he cried and then he called Heather and Heather was with their daughter. So I could hear her crying and she immediately told their child, it's over. He dismissed it. You don't have to testify. And she was so relieved. That was the number one, we kind of want to try this, like get it out there. Let's do this, but we didn't ever want to do it to her. And that was what drove everything that we did was, I can't believe you horrible people are going to do this to a child. And when they said in that response that comparable evidence could be obtained from the child, I thought this judge is going to hate that. He has been an advocate for children his whole career. And the fact that you would put that on her, they've been acting like all their evidence was so strong. And now they're saying that she would present our evidence essentially. So what is your evidence then?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, because what she's going to say is consistent with the defense. And that was just infuriating. Like, how dare you? Like, we fucked up. We destroyed this. So let's put another unbearable weight on a child. Let's make her recount the worst things that have ever happened to her. That would be the worst things that have ever happened to anybody. And then the other worst thing that could happen where you have to, like, your dad has to kill this guy to save you.
Right.
Like, how awful.
You're already right. Now you think that he has to go to prison because he had to kill the guy to save you.
I mean, just imagine, an adult, a totally sane adult couldn't handle that kind of.
I still think that should have been rightfully within the prosecutorial discretion discussion in the prosecutor's office about what about this real life living victim and what are the ends here and what's that going to do re-victimizing that victim when the case is weak.
And they have a duty to do that, don't you think? I do.
I would assume so. And we wouldn't even be having this conversation if, as Michael said at the beginning, this was a vigilante situation. Okay, well then victims have to be forced to testify and things have to happen. But when you have these facts, it's just, it was mind boggling. And, at the end of the day, I think what it proves, and especially for those people who follow Richard Allen's case, when the judge wants to make the decision, they've got the discretion to do it. And when they don't, they've got the discretion not to. And they can use the very same law, the very same Supreme Court law, and just rule on it differently, just depending on how you want this thing to go. And typically, they want to not dismiss cases.
Right. And logically, I get that. What's so frustrating is when a prosecutor like this prosecutor hides behind this false idea of it's my job to charge people who I think have, potentially committed crimes. Yes, that is part of your job, but your job also is to determine when those charges should be brought based on all of the other information. Can I prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt? Is this the right thing to do? You know what I mean? Like, you have to consider witnesses and victims and the circumstances and whether you can prove it, whether the harm that you're going to cause is worth it to your community, to a potential victim, whatever it is. This idea, like, I don't use any discretion. I have to charge everybody that I think might have committed a crime and let a jury decide. No, that's not your job. You know, anybody could do that. You're elected to use your better judgment for the betterment of your community and to keep people safe.
Right.
That's your job. And so I just got so sick of hearing that bullshit about, well, it just needs to go to a jury and we, you know, it's not our fault that she has to testify. Yes, it is your fault.
It's your fault.
And she is your victim too.
Right.
And that's the truth. And I want to say, you know, Mike mentioned Wade Knox. And for anybody listening who doesn't know who that is, Lonoke has a history of real bad sex abuse against kids not being handled appropriately. And Wade Knox was, so there was a guy named Jack Walls who was a Boy Scout leader who serially abused dozens of kids for many years in Lonoke County. And even when people reported it, his dad was like a judge. Elmore, I think, was involved in one of these cases, like slap on the wrist. He didn't do anything. The only reason that he finally got taken down was because Wade Knox, who was one of his victims, finally lost it and held a gun to his head and made him confess to what he'd been doing.
Wow.
And the Child Advocacy Center in Lonoke is called the Wade Knox Child Advocacy Center for that reason. So in that instance, we are grateful that a vigilante finally made people accept that this guy was a raging pedophile who the system kept letting go. He also talked a kid, it's a wonderful kid, he's been in prison for life, into killing his family because his family found out about the abuse. And they wouldn't let that in the trial, and they won't, you know, it's just a whole awful thing. Wade Knox went on to kill himself in front of his children later because he suffered so much from what Jack Walls did to him. A lot of these same people were involved in that. It wasn't very long ago. People that live in Lonoke went to high school with those people, knew their families. That is the backdrop that we are working with, right?
So you guys have a double sort of red flag for, is there a child sex ring in the public officials? Like,
there has been a lot of weird stuff that's happened in Lonoke County that has not been addressed in a way that seems appropriate and reasonable to most people.
wow.
I will say.
I mean, I guess, like you said, that's the best outcome of all of this is that you've broken up that power, shifted hands.
And I have every reason to believe that the new people will bring Lonoke County into 2026, you know, and like get things back in order. I mean, you know, like the one thing that I tell people just so they can get sort of a grasp on the release situation is, and you know this because you mentioned it, federal court. Like these same kinds of charges in federal court require by statute, the Adam Walsh Act, ankle monitors and curfews and the internet access monitoring. And like, it should not be where random state courts can just decide not to really do anything. You know, we should have some, I mean, it doesn't have to be the exact same, but like it over here, you're treating it this way. It's so important that Congress has decided that this has to happen, but over here, like, you're good, just go on.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
it's ridiculous. And again, it doesn't even come to, like, the money thing is really not even an issue because at least in most states, and I'm all for it, they've gotten rid of pretrial detention, but you need conditions. And when you have ankle monitors that a lot of it can be house arrest or ankle monitors that at least the ones out here, if you go into a certain mile radius, it's designed with the radius of the victim's house and the victim's workplace. And sometimes people are like, I can't even go to the store without having to go, 7 miles out of the way because
don't poke your head in. Hey, somebody wants to say hi.
hey,
What
Ralph. Hello.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Fantastic.
Your freedom secured by this beautiful lady?
That's
Well,
right.
I'm not going to keep him. We went and got his property today. So we got all of his things back and the car or the truck. And so that's a good day, you know.
It's a good day.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Well,
get that, and it'll unlock when you stand by it.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Boo.
so one thing I did want to tell people who don't know is that Aaron Spencer, who you just saw, has run for sheriff of Lonoke County. He won the primary, which is what seats out
That's what unseated the current sheriff, and there were two other people in the race, and Aaron got, what was it, 52 or 54% of the vote. So he beat the current sheriff 2-1.
Wow.
And you know what? Like when you look at the numbers, it's like people realize that they matter. You know, like they didn't care before because he always won, and it was like it's just that's the way it is, you know. And people came out in droves and voted and like really showed that it matters, and now everybody's like reinvigorated, you know. And we could spend a whole episode talking about how much you really want a criminal client to run for sheriff, right? Like,
right.
You can imagine how that conversation went. But I told him what I tell people, you know, who have decisions to make, like whether they cooperate and testify against someone else, or, you know, this is your decision. You've asked my opinion, but once you make it, I'm with you. I'll do everything I can to support you.
Right.
And I understood why he felt that it was necessary. And I was going, this is going to make this a lot harder, but that wasn't really the top of his concern list.
Right.
You know, it was like somebody has to do something, and nobody would run. I mean, he tried to talk to everybody that was potential, and, you know, he's like, this is the right thing to do. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, if you think they are coming after you now, it's about to get worse.
So if he becomes sheriff, is all that evidence that was taken from the Fossler's house, that's all Lonoke County, or that's the police department did that investigation?
No, it's Lonoke County because they didn't do it after the July arrest. So
technically, he could have people open an investigation, try to identify any.
Yeah, but it would be worth having somebody that's competent look at those, but it seemed pretty obvious to me that he'd wiped them all.
Right, because so much time had passed. And it sounds like they didn't subpoena the records directly.
Like you get arrested and you're going to go to prison for life for, like, let's say child porn, like you're probably going to try to erase what's on your devices. And they didn't do like a sophisticated analysis to see what was maybe previously on there. And a lot of them were storage devices. So, you know, it's like they missed that opportunity big time.
Yeah. I mean, typically you do the arrest warrant while the arrest is happening so that the evidence doesn't all get destroyed when the person gets out.
Well, yeah, like, can you imagine, like, so you get information, you have evidence that this 67-year-old guy has targeted and assaulted repeatedly a 13 or 14-year-old. So your next step is, where can I find more evidence, right? Like, you want as much evidence as you can get. Now, let me tell you, it's in black and white. So for anybody that thinks like, well, he was charged, but he hadn't been convicted. Okay, whatever. I get it in a general sense, but like, it's like black and white. Like there was no question, none. Okay. But an investigator is going to go, where else can I find evidence to use against this person at trial? Like, he didn't give a statement. Okay. They obviously would go to his house. Right. Because that house was also involved. So, like, does it match up? And does he have other evidence on other devices? Do his kids, his daughter lived with him, does she know anything about this? So it's just really like, doesn't make sense.
Also his email history.
Yeah.
Or chat history, whatever he's been doing on the.
They subpoenaed some, and I don't know I think it was actually in October that they did this, but like social media, you know, but you can't get shit from those after the fact. It's like very limited. You know, I just don't understand how, and even the cop that was investigating that in the summer did seem pretty dug in, but why would your like obvious next step not be to go look at everything that he is around and uses on a daily basis?
And there's no way that I can let this end without asking you, because Bob and I, you know, we saw some of the pleadings of what the state was saying, but can you talk to the people about that, the state's case in this case, how they were using victim blaming and acting as though this was a relationship that the 13-year-old is in with the 69-year-old as part of the way they spoke on this case and how they were going to present it.
Were you in court when I said the line about it's like they're acting like she just left with a bad boyfriend?
I'm not sure, but I don't remember that.
Basically, so the suggestion was she wasn't technically kidnapped because she went willfully, and that she essentially was a willing participant in this endeavor, in this relationship. Then right before we were supposed to go to trial in January, before the judge was removed, and it may have been like December, but it was really close to trial, all of a sudden they go out and start like doing more interviews, and except that those interviews weren't about like what Fossler had been doing or Erin. It was about like what looked to me like building a narrative where the child was to blame, like where the child was the instigator, or, you know, pressured this man into having a relationship, or like was a bad kid or something. Like it was, I mean, I remember saying, I think I texted the prosecutor like, oh, so now your cops are gonna start investigating? And he's like, the investigation never stops. And I was like, well, you could have fooled me, because, you know, as of last summer, they hadn't even inventoried Fossler's truck or Erin's truck, you know? So like, I don't know.
And they use the word relationship at some
point. I can remember, and honestly, the lead deputy prosecutor, I don't think would have gone as far as what some of his team said that they would. Does that make sense? Like one of them came in my office one day and was mouthing off about this, and you know, it's her, and she's not groomed, like she's like in this, and she contacted him, and she like went, well, you know, and I mean, I was so appalled. My front staff was just like, oh my God. And the last thing I said was, I really hope you say that at trial. It'll really help my case. You need to leave now. And my receptionists were like, oh my God, I cannot believe he's saying those things. Like if he says those things to a jury, they're going to eat him alive.
Right.
Like this is victim blaming, slut shaming a child, or whatever you're trying to do here.
Right.
Like none of that is relevant. No judge would ever let you do that. Like, I don't care. And none of it's, I mean, it wasn't even true. Like those weaknesses, because there were other people that they said were involved that were like, no, that didn't happen. I would never be present for that. Like what? But at the end of the day, even if it was true, it doesn't fucking matter, because you can't have sex with kids.
Right.
Like,
right.
What?
I know. And I've another analogy I'm always making is like, okay, if it matters whether she left with him willingly, what about when the 4-year-old, they're told, come over here, there's a dog in my van. They just got in that van willingly. So, you know, ridiculous. But the fact that the state was even, you know, that's the way that they even internally are thinking about this. Well, she left with him willingly. Well, she was talking to the guy, you know, they were in a relationship. She was part of this whole thing. Like that is why everyone kept screaming, grooming is important. Grooming needs to be part of this case.
Grooming. It was textbook. Right. Like you're not in love with a 67-year-old, and he's not in love with you, but he has sure psychologically like made you think so, you know, and we should be taking the hardest position against those people, because children cannot defend themselves. They do not have the brain power to do that, which is why they are targeted.
And which is why the Supreme Court has changed the law that you can't sentence if they were 17 when they
Yes.
committed the crime. You can no longer put those people to death or sentence them to life without the possibility of parole because they recognize medically your brain is not fully functioned. You don't have your full thinking capacity. And so easily manipulated, all those things with grooming. So, I mean, our chat and our people, they are all like, you know, obviously this is grooming. It's disgusting for the state to even think about presenting it the way you said. We were like the same way. Oh, let them say that shit.
Except,
them say
I
that
mean,
shit.
I was like, as a lawyer, I'm like, bring it on, like, because
Right.
this will make my job easier. But as a human and as a mother, like, I cannot believe that you were so low. And it also felt a little bit like it was an effort at extortion or intimidation. Like, here we are right before trial. Well, if you go to trial, I mean, the message that it sent was, if you go to trial, we're gonna
Make your daughter
try
look
to
bad.
humiliate
Right.
your child and ruin her life. And that's just wrong. I mean, I was kind of like, you fucking try.
Right.
Like, even Barbara Elmore is not going to let you go the distance on that. And honestly, I don't think that the chief deputy, he is not a bad person. And I did have a brief conversation with him, and he was like, "What? No, no." I mean, I just don't think that he like understood kind of what was going on in the background. There were numerous things that the police did or other people associated with that side did that he didn't know about till afterwards. Like, there was a warrant one time, and I was like, I'm done with these warrants. They're overbroad, and they're not. There were all these problems, and like, this is bullshit. You're harassing these people, and he would say, they did this when I was out of town. This is overbroad. Like, you're right. Like, he's just. I don't think that he has as much of that in him, but he still is conditioned to be a prosecutor and nothing else, you know? And so you get those blinders on, but that was something that was hanging out there that I mean, I got to tears about it more than once. Like, I don't know how I'm supposed to cross-examine her about these awful, awful, awful things that nobody should ever have to talk about, you know, ever. And I was worried about a jury too. Like, how do you get a jury when you're in the middle of this sheriff's race? Like, and everyone that supports Erin is proud to and vocal about it.
They're going to be off. Right.
Yeah. So I was kind of like, am I going to have 12, like the only 12 people in Lonoke County who want Staley to stay sheriff, you know?
Right.
Like,
right. So is there anything else like about this case specifically or any of this that you want to say before we wrap up?
Oh my God, there's like so many things. There's a million things. I mean, we've barely touched it. I could go on for days about this. I've got background on Fosler. I've got background on the judge. I've got so many little things. I can't even begin. But I would love to come back on when y'all hit a topic that makes sense, or come on with Erin or whatever. And there's so many little roads we could go down, you know?
All right. No, I think
I'll tell you this currently. I filed a motion to seal the criminal case, but I did it after I left, like 2 months almost for public information to be disseminated. Like, I could have done it the next day and prevented most of that from being released, but we didn't because, you know, we do think the public should know, but you don't, like, when something like this happens and your case is dismissed, you have an absolute right for that criminal case not to be just like out there. And I mean, that's like logical, right? But this one of the females on the team, she really hates me. And she responded with, "We are going to object. Like, the public deserves to know the truth." So the next thing that's going to happen is she's going to write some wild response that's going to give her a platform to say a bunch of crazy bullshit, and then us back, and then he'll probably sell the case anyway.
So
and
which judge hears this kind of stuff?
The Judge Wilson.
Oh, really?
So the state, the judge has to seal the case unless the state proves by a preponderance of the evidence that doing so would like present a risk to the public or not be in the interest of justice. So I'm interested.
Good luck. I see how they. Yeah, well, that'll be a great avenue to push us all back together, for sure. I hope you saw a lot of people making a lot of comments, even just in the regular chat, but you've got BMW saying 2 badass ladies taking on the world. Thank you, and thank you for your continued support. You've got Classic Overthinker saying thank you, Erin. Would love to see you again on Defense Diaries. And then Miss Pris 59 says I'm glad you're having her on. Of course, that's you, and thank you for your continued support. Classic Overthinker also said thank you, Erin at Spencer for Sheriff. And then Michael, hopefully you can just convey. So GA Cat Mom says, thank you, Erin and Michael, for rigorously defending Erin Spencer, as you guys did. Sounds like it was a battle back there with you guys.
And it ended in a way that I never imagined. So, well, I appreciate all those comments so much. And thank you so much to you and Bob for covering this and for showing up and being there to let me bounce stuff off of you. You gave me some really good ideas and it was awesome. And I'm so glad I got to know you. I got to know a lot of people, experts and people like you guys. And I'm so excited to sort of know that this all exists. I'm still like an old lady. So I wasn't even TikTok. I don't know how to work TikTok. I wasn't I didn't know.
Me neither though.
On video, So thanks for bringing me into 2026. And I would love to come on again.
Yes, we'd love to have you. And because somebody, I just saw it in the chat, mentioned it. I don't know how close we are, but I'm nowhere closer. So these are subs, just so you know, Erin, if you like someone's show, you just click, you subscribe to it. I like this. It's free. So all of you.
I've already figured out how to do it with you. Oh, let's have Carrie on. I want to come on with Carrie Landau. She's amazing.
Oh, Bob was dying to get on with Carrie Landau. But we thought she was going to be an expert. So you're like, all right, it makes more sense just to wait.
But now she's not. And let me tell you, before she left the FBI, which was not that long ago, when she was the government's witness in those kinds of cases, it was like, shit, we're fucked. She is so good and so smart and so lovely, and she would be great. And I would love to come on with her and just hear her talk.
All right. Well, we'll have to absolutely get that in the books. Everyone's like, yes, please.
Thank you so much.
So anyway, all of you out there, subscribe if you haven't yet. We're almost at 70,000. Erin, thank you so much for being here with us. We greatly appreciate it, and we will absolutely set something up to have you on again. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much, Holly, and thanks everybody for listening and watching. Have a good day.
Bye. All right, guys. Thank you. I put up so many of you with your gems. I put them up. The new members, we started with Jennifer and DCJ Peppers and Casey and Perry 3 and Trisha Morin. Sorry, I'm the worst. Boston RN Kate, Dawn Marie. Welcome. Family hugs for all of you. Oh, and there's a bunch more. Side Eye Jess, Christina Cameron, Blanca, TN Lake Gal, Tennessee Lake Gal. Pretty sure that's what that is. I'm pretty sure this all comes from our very generous new member who something wine was in the name. Gifted 50 memberships last time. Make sure you guys all subscribe though. And then we've got all you guys with your generous trophies, which we appreciate, your little gems. I mean, things of that nature. I did ask your question, Fern's mom. Thank you for your generosity. We got more gems and parties and all this, all the good stuff, Love the Unk Alert. And then lastly, we got Music to My Soul says, it's so validating to see that Erin was frustrated with the same aspects of the case we all are. Jesus, I'm giant. Thank you, Erin, Michael, and Fighting for Erin. All right, guys, that does it for me. I'm out. See you later. Bye.